A week before his final race, Kyle Busch climbed out of his truck after a win at Dover and said something nobody thought twice about at the time. He said, "You never know when the last one is." He was right, and none of us saw it coming. On May 21st, NASCAR lost its winningest driver in history. Kyle Busch, 41 years old, two-time Cup Series champion, passed away after contracting sepsis while fighting bacterial pneumonia. Hours before his death, his family had told the public he was hospitalized with a severe illness. He was already scheduled out of the Coca-Cola 600. Nobody imagined the severity. The death certificate revealed the pneumonia had been developing for days, possibly weeks. As far back as May 10th, at Watkins Glen, Busch was requesting a doctor over his radio after the race. Days later, at a GM simulator facility in Charlotte, 911 was called. He was coughing up blood. He thought he was going to pass out. And just 6 days earlier, he had won a NASCAR Truck Series race at Dover. That was win number 234 across NASCAR's National Series, the most by any driver ever. To understand the weight of this loss, you have to understand what Kyle Busch represented in the sport. His wasn't just a good driver who had a long career. Busch is the all-time wins leader across 3 of NASCAR's 4 top series: the Cup Series, the Xfinity Series, and the Truck Series. His 63 Cup wins put him in rarefied air. His dominance in the lower series was almost unfair. He ran those races when he didn't have to, simply because he loved winning. He was polarizing. Fans loved to hate him, and that made the sport more interesting. He wasn't quiet. He wasn't diplomatic. He was raw and competitive, and occasionally impossible, and the sport was better for it. You never know when the last one is. Those were among his final public words. There's not a more haunting line in the history of this sport. Now the NASCAR garage has a void that simply cannot be filled by one person. His team, his competitors, the people who cheered and the people who booed, they're all grieving the same loss. Let's talk about what this means at every level, because this is bigger than a single driver's passing. First, the circumstances. The 911 audio paints a disturbing picture. Busch was at a GM technical facility running simulator work for the Coca-Cola 600 when his condition deteriorated rapidly. He'd been racing through what appears to have been a worsening respiratory illness. The death certificate notes the pneumonia had been present for days to weeks, which means Kyle Busch was competing and winning while his body was fighting an infection that would ultimately take his life. That raises real questions about athlete health monitoring in NASCAR. When a driver asks for a doctor over radio after a race, what happens next? Who follows up? Are there mandatory evaluations? This sport operates at 200 miles per hour. The physical demands are extreme. This tragedy should prompt a hard conversation about how NASCAR handles driver wellness off the track. Second, the legacy conversation. Busch's 234 wins is a record that will stand for a generation, possibly longer. The way he pursued wins across all 3 national series wasn't just about padding stats. It reflected a competitive obsession that defined his identity. He didn't have an off mode. That's rare in any era of any sport. Third, what this does to the championship picture. Busch was a legitimate contender every year he ran. That pressure in the garage, that benchmark every other driver measured themselves against, it's simply gone. NASCAR doesn't just lose a competitor, it loses a standard. Samantha Busch broke her public silence this week, and the statement she posted speaks to something beyond the NASCAR world. She thanked strangers. She thanked fans who once booed her husband. She called it the most heartbreaking days of their families' lives, and in the same breath described feeling surrounded by love. The response from the NASCAR community has been overwhelming. Drivers who competed against Busch, some of whom had genuine on-track rivalries with him, have been open about how much his presence shaped their careers. And here's what's striking to fans who spent years jeering Kyle Busch are the same ones posting tributes. That's the mark of a generational figure. You don't have to like someone to recognize their greatness. And right now, everyone recognizes it. NASCAR uses this moment to overhaul its driver health protocols. Kyle Busch's legacy becomes the catalyst for mandatory post-race medical evaluations and real-time health monitoring. His record of 234 wins stands as the unreachable number every future champion chases the sport's version of DiMaggio's streak. His children, Brexton and Lennox, grow up knowing exactly who their father was to millions of people. The questions about driver health get absorbed into the noise of a busy racing calendar. Nothing structural changes, the sport moves on too quickly, and the conversation around how Kyle Busch's illness progressed undetected to multiple race weekends gets buried. A tragedy that could change the sport becomes only a memorial rather than a turning point. Here's what I keep coming back to. Kyle Busch won a race 6 days before he died. He crossed the finish line, climbed out of that truck, and told the world, you never know when the last one is. And then that was it. Whether you were in his corner your whole life or spent 2 decades booing him at tracks across America, you know exactly what this sport just lost. So I want to hear from you. What does Kyle Busch's legacy mean to you? And do you think this tragedy should change how NASCAR handles driver health on the road? Drop it in the comments. This is a conversation worth having. If this kind of in-depth sports coverage is what you're here for, the subscribe button is right there. We'll see you on the next one.